This is Money Stories.
Brought to you by Amy and Ben from In Financial Services. Today, we're joined by Pat Mears. Pat is a successful property manager, business owner, and property investor.
We learn a lot from Pat today about budgeting and saving and how he used saving to buy his first home. Pat wants to pass on the lesson of delayed gratification.
Enjoy.
Okay, do you want to just give us a little bit of your background, tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a property manager, got started in the industry over 20 years ago, straight out of school. I started my own business, Rubix Realty, 14 years ago, July just gone. And we service the Maitland area predominantly, and probably within about 30 minutes of there, we go out and just residential property.
And what made you get started in real estate?
So as a kid growing up, I still am fascinated by cars. So I wanted to be a car salesman.
Yeah.
And then when our family was buying a car, I realised that they were wearing neckties, and we just introduced neckties at primary school. And I couldn't tie it. And I was like, oh, that's that job gone. So I moved on to all these different ones, and then started reading property investment books. And my dad said, you realise that not all real estate agents do sales. Like some actually look after investment properties. And at that point, I'd never really thought about how it all worked with rent collection and that sort of thing. So I started looking into that, and then work experience in year 10, rang around a few real estates and got work experience with one of the local ones. And then they got me back for weekend work, school holidays and that sort of thing. And then I did not want to be at school. One of my parents was a school teacher and mum was a TAFE teacher.
Oh, gosh.
So education's obviously important. And basically it was you either go to school or you get a job. And I applied for a part-time job, which we thought might have been a weekend and then one day a week during school, which where I went to school, we had Wednesdays off. And anyway, I went in for the interview and he said, well, that doesn't work for us, but would you be interested in a traineeship? I'm like, yep. He gave me a form. I went to the car and I said, Mum, I'm quitting school. I've just got a traineeship. And she said, well, let me talk to your father. And then my dad had to go in and have a meeting with this guy. And basically year 11 finished early. So I had part of December and through to the end of January to work out whether it was what I wanted to do or not. And I decided it was. I think even if I hated the job, I probably would have said it was just to get out of going back to school. But I worked there for a number of years, finished my traineeship, and then, went and worked at a couple of different places before starting Rubix Realty.
Yeah, so real estate, you've always been in that industry.
Yeah, never done anything else.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And can you tie a tie now?
I can, but I can't do those fancy Windsor ones. So, yes, but not great.
Yeah. And then what are your financial dreams now? Obviously, you've had your business open for a long time and you've said that you've done property investment. So what are your financial dreams now and why?
So I've got 2 young boys. I'll probably be working till I'm 60. The idea is we've got our own home, so obviously pay off that mortgage. I've got 2 units that are rented out, and I would like, when I sell the business and hopefully have everything paid off, be able to purchase a unit up on the Sunshine Coast and spend my retirement winters in the warmth and then come back to the Hunter Valley for the summers and that sort of thing. So I guess that's a big goal. Like obviously, to be financially secure, but that would be a dream to be able to, I'm just heading up the Sunshine Coast and the winter house and that sort of thing. So that would be something that I'm aiming for. At this point, obviously things can change in that, but that's the current dream.
Yeah. And is the Sunshine Coast more just like the warmth, or do you do any surfing or?
No, so I can't surf. I did, I went to the Gold Coast, this could be like 15, 16, 17 years ago, and I booked surfing lessons and they had the biggest seas they'd had since 1970 something. So I got one lesson in and then they were all cancelled and basically spent a week or 10 days, whatever it was, in the unit doing nothing because of the weather outside. And then I checked out a day early, which confused the front desk because they're like, you realise you've got another night. And I looked out the window and like, yeah, I'm cool to go home. And anyway, so I can't surf. I've only been to the Sunshine Coast once. We went up there for our honeymoon, and it just seemed a lot more chill and relaxed than the Gold Coast, not as busy. But yeah, I love being near the water. So would love to one day have some sort of water view, whether it's, you know, the lake, the beach. Currently, my bedroom window looks out at a dam, and my wife says that's my water view. Isn't as exciting or quite what I had in mind, but it'll do for now.
And setting up, you said you've got the boys.
Yeah.
Setting up like your investment plan and your plan for your financial dreams, is that helping them?
Yeah, so hopefully it'll show them what can be achieved and that they'll be able to do it themselves, and depending what the market does when they get to that point, hopefully it'll put us in a position where we can give them, you know, a helping hand, whether it's just being guarantor or giving them a little bit of money towards their first property. So hopefully give them a good base or grounding to work from to do something extra with their money rather than just pay, you know, the standard things and sort of retire with your own home and super, like something extra from that.
That would be great because, like, I think the statistic is like 60% of Australians need the bank of mum and dad and use the bank of mum and dad now.
Yeah, right.
So to be able to help is really good.
Yeah, whether that's like deposit or equity in their home. And there's plenty of ways that you can use the bank of mum.
So we're going to chat today about your money story and I guess how you got started in investing and planning for your financial future. You said before that when you were young, you were reading property investment books. What age was that? And
probably teenager. So we used to go to the Gold Coast for our September school holidays every year. And obviously back then, in the 90s, it was like a 10-hour trip. So we'd have books to read or whatever. And my dad was an accountant, so he'd have, you know, investment books and that sort of thing. And I just started reading them and, you know, sort of tried to understand what they were about and that sort of thing. And then obviously getting into property management, could see what other people had done and see, you know, sometimes you'd find out what industry that person was working in, so sort of be able to see, you know, what their income was and go, yeah, righto. So you don't need to be a millionaire to get started or anything like that. It is achievable for a lot of people, even if they don't realise it.
And what were some of the first steps you took to start investing?
So from a very young age, we knew that we had to buy our own first car. So obviously, you know, savings and that sort of thing. So some of that savings, there was a banking through the school, and each week our parents would give us money to put in. So, you know, obviously you couldn't touch it, so it just sort of built up over time. And then casual jobs as we got older, so that, you know, we knew, I guess that sort of trained us or set a grounding for savings. Just because you get, you know, $100 for your birthday doesn't mean you have to spend the whole $100. You can put some aside for something else. And, you know, so I guess that was probably the first thing. And then obviously if they're not going to buy your first car, they're not going to buy your first house either. So you kind of, so just, I guess that, like, just that whole grounding of you got to save to get ahead.
Yeah. How did you go with savings as you went into your teenage years? Because I'm not a saver.
Not too bad. I had to borrow a couple of $1,000 off my dad for my first car. He charged me interest on that loan.
Oh, no.
And that really annoyed me. But anyway, it is what it is.
You're still holding the grudge.
So I guess, it just sort of, once you sort of develop those skills, you sort of retain them as you get older and that sort of thing. So, I don't know if I had a set amount from each pay that I would put in, but I just didn't really... I'm not a shopper. I hate shopping, and so I'm not going to go buy things. And back when I was younger, you know, you weren't didn't have access to smartphones and jump on eBay or,
Yeah.
downloading apps and things that chew money. So, and then when I did buy my first car, I had 2 accounts. So one was like a spending account, and then I actually put money into a car account. So that's where I pay for my fuel, the insurance, rego, tyres, all that sort of stuff. So I guess at that point, so I would have been 17, splitting my finances into play money and, responsible money. So, yeah.
And do you still do that? Because that's a really big thing that like really helps you see where your money is going.
Yeah, so my pay goes into an offset account,
Yep.
and then money gets put over into the mortgage, and then I've got another account which is my pocket money or play money. So I put money in that each week, and that's, if I go out or if I buy lunch or whatever, it comes out of that. And then Meg and I've got like a food account, so that's for our groceries and like if we eat out or whatever, have dinner out. So yeah, we don't have like 10 different accounts for different things, but yeah, like essentials, there are different things there. And when you're not sort of looking, you're just living off those smaller amounts, you can sort of build up that savings or the buffer on the mortgage because you're not relying on it. You just, whatever you, like, if someone's earning $1,000 a week and then they get a new job and suddenly they'll have $1,500, it's very easy to increase your lifestyle to $1,500. Whereas if you, and that's what I did as I earned more money as I went through my career. I tried to live on what I was already living on. Obviously with inflation and things going up, sometimes you've got to add a little bit extra. But yeah, I try to stay around and put as much extra as I can into a savings or into the mortgage to get ahead.
Yeah. How'd you go from having that savings account to obviously buying your first home, which would have been owner-occupied, I assume?
Yeah.
And then now you've got like the properties, the investment properties in Queensland. How did you go about doing that?
So obviously from reading and that sort of thing and talking to people, I knew about equity and that sort of thing. So I knew I didn't have to save a deposit, so to speak, to be able to purchase something else. So it was a bit delayed getting the investment properties. I bought my first house, paid it down, made money on it, sold it, and then I built. And then the market sort of took off. So I had equity there. And that's when I sort of started to look to see what was around. I had actually had an offer accepted on a property in Maitland, and 2 days later, COVID hit. They were talking about rent freezes and that sort of thing. And obviously I'm thinking, well, that's how I earn an income from rent collection. Yeah. So I withdrew from that. And then once, I think things stabilised and obviously went the complete opposite direction to what everyone thought, I was then confident again to go and look at purchasing, and having that investment property plus the equity in our own occupier has meant that we could then do an upgrade last year to a bigger home closer to where we want to be. So whereas if I hadn't bought anything and let's say just saved like mortgage payments, we wouldn't be where we are by saving. So it's a combination of saving and investing and doing things to get ahead. So.
And did you think when you were young that you would be like in the position that you are now, like a business owner and have investment properties and everything?
Yeah, I wanted to be a business owner. And then I think if you're going to be managing other people's investment properties, you need to be able to see it from their perspective. So, have that perspective of there is expenses involved with holding a property. Yes, it's hopefully increasing in value, but there's a lot of other things like stresses and that sort of stuff involved. And then, when you get something repaired, you can sort of relate to it and say, well, this is what's happening or whatever. My properties are managed, they're in Queensland, so managed by someone else. So I do get that whole, the phone rings or I get an email, it's like, oh, what is it now? And then it might just be, we've done an inspection. It's like, oh, cool. All right. But you do sort of go, and then I do, often I'll ring a client and I'm like, I'm like that child that's like, hey, mum, dad, I need some money. I said, but I'm not spending on me, I'm spending on your property. And just this morning I had to ring an owner about an air conditioner and she's like, oh, whatever's got to be done, just get it done. Just let us know what it is. And she said, we kind of forget about that place until you ring. And I said, yeah, I wonder how many people have in their phone, do not answer, he just wants money.
A money pit. So based on all the stuff that you're doing, what is a money lesson that you wish more people knew about that they rarely talk about?
Delayed gratification. So there's things that you might want today and you might be in a position to go and buy them. So let's say a motorbike, a flashy car or whatever, but those purchases then impact what you can do later on. So earning like, when you have savings and just live on a smaller amount, you might go, right, well, when I get to X amount, I'm going to buy that. But that could take 6, 12, 18 months.
Yeah.
And then by that time, you might be like, oh, yeah, that's still cool, but I want that one now, or, something better. And then all of a sudden, you get to a point where you no longer want the thing you thought you want. And by not racing out and getting it, you've saved yourself, like, for a car or whatever, you saved yourself like increased costs for a better car, like insurance is obviously going to be more expensive for a flasher car, but you've also saved yourself the depreciation on that item. So let's say you spent 50 grand on a car, in 5 years, it might only be worth 20 or 30. So you've lost 20 or 30,000, and that new car or new toy feeling, it evaporates pretty quick.
Pretty quickly, yeah.
I think that's a massive thing also for young people and like people with social media, because you just see all this flashy stuff all the time. And it changes all the time, like the trends change.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you can get so caught up in just wanting to, what is it, like keeping up with the Joneses?
Yeah.
And just like buying all that stuff, and then, week to week you've got no money left, and then you're actually, in 10 years' time, the people that didn't buy all that will be so much better ahead than what you are.
Yeah. And I think if you're not spending all your money, you become accustomed to going without things. And it's not like you're going without, like you're, missing out on things. It just means that you appreciate the basics in life a bit better, So, you might go to a fancy restaurant once a year or whatever, and it's like, wow, this is like really cool. Like, we're out of place here, whereas you get other people go, oh, we just spent $200 on a dinner out, the two of us, but it's a regular, so it's sort of not as, it's not as, I don't know, it loses that gloss or shine or whatever. So.
I think like finding out what is important to you and then spending your money on that rather than like all the other crap that you don't need to buy.
It adds up quickly.
Yeah.
So on that, is there like, what's the best thing that you have bought, or the best decision that you've made money-wise from your perspective?
Best thing I've bought would have been my first home, to then allow me to like step into other places. And then starting my own business. So I don't know if I'd still be doing this job 22 years later if I was working for someone else. It's a different feeling. I don't think I'd go and work for someone. It's given me, more options. Obviously, the business is an asset itself, so that then helps you with borrowing to do different things. There's obviously challenges with being a business owner and added stresses that you might not have as an employee. So they would be the two things, would be buying my first house that's allowed me to get to the one I'm in now and starting my own business.
And what do you think, if someone else wanted to go out and start their own business, what do you think would make like a good business owner?
Someone who's patient, not expecting it to happen overnight. So the first 12 months was very slow. I was working part-time for someone else, I'm still doing property management, but out of the area, trying to grow my own. I didn't earn anything in the first year. It was basically like, because it's going to be obviously basic expenses with subscriptions and that sort of thing. So what I earn off the very few properties I was managing was absorbed by that. And then it just sort of, because I wasn't relying on that money coming in, like the business money just sort of built up itself. And then I could start sort of marketing a little bit more. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, well, the business is growing. I'm still busy at work. Something's got to give. And obviously I chose my business. There's a lot of people who are like, what if it doesn't work? And my response was, well, it has to. And I think having that like, well, there's no other option. Like failure's not an option. It's got to succeed. Just meant that, I'll put in the hard yards and you did go without and that sort of thing. But I paid myself a smaller wage, just enough to cover like expenses. So, time, patience, but also self-belief that, you can make it happen. It's if you put the effort in, you'll be rewarded.
I think that's a great lesson too for even just people, if they're not a business owner, but just trying to buy like their first home or an investment property. Just like back yourself. If you're putting that much money and that much effort into something, you're going to make it work because there's no option for it to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone just starting out on their financial journey and, getting started in property?
So again, back to delayed gratification. Yeah. So you don't need, your first house doesn't have to be like the greatest house you're ever going to live in.
Yeah.
What was your first house like?
So mine was an ex-housing commission home, a little 3-bedroom weatherboard house.
Yeah.
And I did very little to it. Like I painted. Do not like painting, but
it's the worst job ever.
But then the results you see afterwards, it's sort of like, that's cool, I did it, and then hopefully I only have to paint once. Maybe that's why you move every 5 or 6 years so I can avoid painting again.
I had the opposite experience when I painted. I would see it every day and I was like, oh, I don't like the look of it.
What a move.
Yeah. And then I polished the floorboards and I put a new bathroom because it had to be done. And just put an outdoor area. And I got to a point where on that place it was sort of, there was things I wanted to do, but then I sort of thought, well, am I doing these to increase its value, to make my life easier, or is it sort of I'm just wanting to spend money to spend money?
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, what's the next step? So sold it and then built a house. It was a great experience building. But again, I built like the basic and then added to it stuff that I couldn't afford initially.
Yeah.
And then same thing, 5-6 years later, I had big plans and I was like, oh, this is going to cost X, Y, Z. And I feel like I'm just doing things to spend money,
It's so hard because you get stuck in it because you're like, I'm going to live there. I want it to look nice.
Yeah.
And there's so many improvements that you can do.
Yeah.
But it's like, what's the one that's actually going to have an impact for my investment?
Yeah. Or like, can I spend that money on the next place?
Yep.
And do better. So
yeah, or keep that 20 grand in my loan account so I'm not paying as much interest or repayments. And how do you hope that your story will inspire others to achieve, I guess, their financial goals?
I guess just hopefully realise that you don't need everything now. You can it's more rewarding, I think. I mean, I've never lived any way different, but I think it's more rewarding to look back over the last 20 years and go, I've come a long way and realise that you're in a pretty comfortable position compared to other people. A lot of people have had like really nice cars like from the get-go, and then you sort of think, well, you've had 6 cars over the last 15, 20 years, and let's say they've lost 10 grand on each car, that's 60,000. Like when you haven't even factored in the repayment, the interest and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, you look at them and it's like, was it worth it? Whereas where I am now, it's sort of, I can see what I've got and I can see how far I've come and go, well, I think my financial future is pretty comfortable. Even if I don't invest any further, if I just pay off all my debts in the next 20 years, it's sort of, I feel like I'll be in quite a comfortable position for retirement.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
And are you still like reading books and doing research constantly, or?
Yeah, so realestate.com is probably like one of the most used apps on my phone.
You would be friends with my mum.
So I've got various saved searches. So where I live, I've got a saved search because I like to know what's coming on in my suburb and go, oh, mine's better than that, or what are they asking, and so you can compare to your own. And then I've got where my investment properties are. I've got saved searches for there as well, so I can alert each time something's listed there. And again, just to sort of keep an idea on the market. Yeah. And then I've got others, so I've got a Sunshine Coast one, obviously my purchase in 20 years, just to see what the market's doing. And just other areas out of curiosity, what are they doing and that sort of thing. I've got clients who I know are wanting to invest in certain areas. So I'll just save a search on my phone and might sometimes flick it. My parents are thinking of downsizing, so I will often send them stuff. Sometimes it's just because I know that it's absolutely nothing like what they're looking at, and just wait to see what the response is, if there is one. But yeah, and probably not reading as much, but podcasts these days, and just between appointments. So it's sort of, I can listen to 2 hours worth of podcasts in a morning out, just hopping in and out of the car between inspections. But yeah, always learning, and I follow a lot of people on socials who talk about investment properties or business and that sort of thing. So,
is there anyone you recommend?
So from a property management perspective, there's a lady, Ashley Goodchild, in Perth, and she runs a podcast called the PM Collective. And there's a couple of groups like IGT, which is again a property management group. You've got I can't think of his name, Bryce Holdaway. I think it's the Property Couch. They talk about investing in property, and then obviously you got Jack Anderson, who might be a bit full on for some people, but he's done very well, and he's got his own opinions on what to do and that sort of thing. So because there's obviously variety of ways you can invest in property, chase the rent return or chase capital growth. I guess it depends what you want to have at the end of the day, which way you go, or you might have a combination of properties that are returning a really good yield, and other properties that are achieving really high capital growth but less rent. So.
Yeah. Do you remember that first book that you did read?
Yes, I think it was a book by John Fitzgerald, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, no worries.
Do you remember any lessons from that book?
No, and then another one, Jan Summers.
Yeah.
So this is probably like older school people would remember them. So her story was quite interesting. She had a number of books, but I think from memory they used to move around for her husband's work, and they'd like to buy where they moved to, and they'd keep the last one, but didn't realise that they were like trying to buy outright sort of thing, and she didn't realise until a little while on that she could actually use the rental income and the equity in that to leverage off to buy the next one. So that's how she got started.
Yeah, right.
And then John Fitzgerald, I'm pretty sure he runs a property investment company as well, but I can't remember what the name of it is. So, but yeah, I think that would be the two that I started out with.
Yeah, cool.
Is there anywhere else you'd look for advice or help when you're getting started?
So people who've done it. So obviously in my job, I've got investors who are very varied, and chat to them to see where they started. So I've got clients who come to mind, school teachers, and they bought one because they just, we need to do something, and then it worked. So then they bought a second one, and then the house next door came up for sale, so they bought that one as well. But they bought three, and that was enough for them. They didn't. Some people are chasing 10, 15, 20. Like massive numbers. But I guess it depends on the individual person. What do you think you're going to need? And you might go, well, 3 is going to be enough for me, or in some cases 1 might be enough depending on their lifestyle. So investors like clients of mine, mortgage brokers, like people who've done it themselves, accountants, just seeing what different people have done and what's worked for different people. So
yeah.
And then if you could sum up your money story in one sentence, what would it be?
Learn delayed gratification and save until you get enough to invest.
Yeah. And obviously you were quite proactive too, because I know you talk a lot about saving, but obviously being quite proactive and I guess always researching and continuing to look at things as well.
Yeah, I think once you get that real estate bug, it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Like we'll go on a holiday and I'll detour from where we're going just to go past some real estate windows and you're like, could we afford to live here? You're like, we can afford that little one, Yeah, I think once you get that bug, it doesn't go away.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
Maybe.
were in Bali the other month and we started looking at real estate in Bali.
I did.
We're like, what are we doing here? We don't know anything that's going on, but it's interesting.
I was
Yeah.
saying that some families go to like the sites and we go to construction sites and look at like investment properties. But yeah, well, thank you so much for chatting, Pat.
Thanks for having me.
This is Money Stories.
Brought to you by Amy and Ben from In Financial Services.